I spent the last 10 days living with a Nintendo Switch 2. I've traveled with it, I've had restless nights, crouched over it in bed when I should have been sleeping. I've had friends over to obliterate me at Mario Kart World. And in that time, one thing has become crystal clear. How good a purchase the Nintendo Switch 2 is directly depends on which mode you plan to use it in. Because while the thing is docked as a home console, I think the Switch 2 is very hard to recommend right now. But as a handheld, this is a masterpiece. Let me show you why I think there's such a difference. So the very first thing I did when I opened up my Switch 2 was banished my Switch 1 from the gaming room, set up the new dock and a new magnetic way to charge my Switch 2 controllers, locked in.
Those? Okay, you're playing Hogwarts Legacy on Switch. I mean, that's just...
Why I think there's such a difference. So the very first thing I did when I opened up my Switch 2 was banished my Switch 1 from the gaming room, set up the new...
He's got that, like, charger so buns. Like, why?
New dock and a new magnetic way to charge my Switch 2 controllers, locked in and booted it up on the big home cinema screen. And one thing became very immediately obvious. This is not close to a PlayStation 5 experience, which might sound obvious, but I'm getting to why that's important. Graphically speaking, if you run the same game on both, let's say Cyberpunk 2077, Nintendo will run the game with only about 80% of the effects at about 60% of the resolution, running at
They have Cyberpunk on Switch?
50% of the frame rate, and you don't need to be on a 150-inch projector screen to be able to tell. Even on a good TV, you can't help but feel like this isn't how the game was meant to be played. Not to mention controllers. While the Joy-Con 2s that come with the Switch 2, they are absolutely an improvement over the Switch 1's controllers, they're not close to the feeling of a PlayStation 5 DualSense. This is designed for settling into a couch and disappearing for 4 hours at a time. This works for that, but it's not where the Joy-Cons shine. They don't have the adaptive triggers that PlayStation does. You know, the joysticks, they still feel a lot nubbier than I was hoping. They're still not a good way of precisely aiming a gun while shooting, for example, which is kind of why I find myself having to use the gyro controls to find...
Gyro controls? No, that's just... This is triggering.
line up those headshots, and it's just not my preferred way to play. Oh yeah, and I just found out yesterday that the same tech that caused the entire joystick drift disaster on Switch 1 is still present here, so not excited about that. All finished off with the networking. Current home consoles have faster Wi-Fi than the Switch 2, more stable, more fleshed out online experiences, and more dedicated game servers to keep online lag to a minimum.
Wait,
my point being, Nintendo Switch 2 does have a lot going for it, which I'm getting to, but I just want to be clear, what it doesn't do is feel like a home console experience when it's docked in. And that would be absolutely fine if it wasn't more expensive than one. Switch 2 plus Cyberpunk will cost you $520. PS5 Slim plus Cyberpunk you can now get for around $480. But that's not all. Remember, that PS5 is also your entire home entertainment system with access to all the apps and proper surround sound Dolby Atmos support. It's your Blu-ray player. Well, for the three of you who are still popping those bad boys in. It has one...
Hey, no disrespect on my Blu-ray, bro. Inside Out Blu-ray. All 3 Minion movies. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I'm a Minion connoisseur, you could say.
Terabyte of storage compared to 256 gigs on Switch 2, which you would have to pay another $150 in microSD express cards just to match. And yes, you can get around playing with these Joy-Cons, like the new Switch 2 Pro controller is awesome, with these joysticks genuinely feeling like, to quote Nintendo Life, sliding a spoon over an oiled water bottle. But that's another $85.
What?
Spoon over an oiled water bottle. But
rubbing a spoon over an oiled water bottle. Why?
That's another $85 if you want that. I do think this mouse mode on the new Joy-Cons is brilliant, surprisingly capable and not a toy-like gimmicky feature. It's just none of the games that I've wanted to play have needed it, apart from the Switch 2 Welcome Tour, but, well, that's another $10. Game chat is, I'd say, another pretty well-executed feature.
Yeah, I actually caught him in the game chat.
See, you want to know what's better than that? Like, this is like...
I'd say another pretty well executed feature.
Yeah, I actually caught it.
Like, what is this? Like, they have their own Discord, but like, listen to the quality.
$10. Game chat is, I'd say,
And look at the quality on that.
another pretty well executed.
Mario Kart's running at 5 FPS, and this one's like 440p with 2 FPS.
Feature.
Yeah, I actually caught it in the gameplay asshole.
Yeah, that part of it's really impressive. No, I can't hear anything on yours either. The fact that the other person can still hear you even if you're sitting like 2 meters away
Oh, I can't hear your game.
from the console and you have your game volume turned on, it does feel a bit like black magic. But that will cost you another $55 for the camera and $20 a year for the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, starting from 2026. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say this is a bad experience. My point is that compared to other home consoles in 2025 and the Switch One, the only reason I can see anyone would consider going for one of these to play on their TV is Nintendo's own first-party Switch 2 games. But I just don't think it's a strong enough lineup to justify it. I was a bit disappointed with Mario Kart World. This was meant to be the killer app for Switch 2, but there just isn't anything to sink your teeth into unless you're specifically in a group party setting. Now, it is fantastic when you have one. Me and my friends were squealing at the screen as we were getting eliminated one by one in this new knockout tour, but when I...
Oh my gosh. Yo. Switch, or Mario Kart, specifically on the single, like, on a single, like, thing, like, I get the bumpers aren't that, like, small, right? But, like, this is so uncomfortable, like, doing that, like, it is so bad. I've played with a single Joy-Con before on a Switch, and it is, like, impossible.
When I heard this game was getting, like, the biggest price hike from one in this new knockout tour, but when I heard this game was getting, like, the biggest price hike from the last generation, I thought, oh, yeah, but that's because they're building a whole new open world. It's going to be next level. But really, that open world is just a playground. It's not this incredibly dense, Zelda-like free roam area where you're constantly...
You don't get Zelda in you cook this, that. Yeah, but you're not asking for, like, Breath of the Wild in Mario Kart, right? You're asking for Mario Kart. And I don't see a problem. I mean, the price is kind of stupid. What, $60 to $80, but... Like, I don't see a problem with it. You just get a playground to play in with Mario Kart, so...
waiting to see what's around the next bend. It's literally just, if you love riding around in Mario Kart, here's an arena to do that in. And you can collect some digital stickers if you do it well. There's a Switch 2 version of Mario Party, but again, party game. It's not going to keep you up at night solo questing. The only...
I mean, this is, like, pissing me off, because you're not getting...
But
Mario Kart Jamboree if you're playing solo Mario Kart, or you're not getting Mario Party Jamboree if you're gonna play just Mario Party by yourself, right? You're gonna be playing it at, like, a gathering with a bunch of people playing Mario Party.
again, party game. It's not going to keep you up at night solo questing. The only ones that I'd say would are the remastered versions of the two big Zelda games from the Switch One.
Yeah.
And while the whole weapons that break as you use them thing doesn't do it for me personally, I think it's pretty fair to say that these are all-time great games that millions of people love. And just looking at the frame rate difference at the Great Deku Tree, you can see why they remastered them. I just feel like you've probably played them to death already, if you were going to. And then everything else is just third-party games. Cyberpunk, Split Fiction, Hogwarts Legacy. There are tons, but look at it on this TV. It's really hard to not see all the jagged edges as you pan around with your character. These will be a better experience on PS5 if you're primarily playing on a screen. But what if you're not? What if you're like me and you really value the handheld experience above everything else? If you're the kind of person who really struggles to get stuck into games on home consoles because you can only play in smaller chunks and you want to be able to instantly jump in when you have 10 minutes spare. Or if you travel a lot or really like the comfort of gaming in bed, well then, I cannot recommend the Switch 2 more. See, here's the thing. The benchmark for what to expect from a game is extremely different with a handheld compared to...
But if you want the handheld, you just buy the Steam Deck. It's the same price for a computer in your hand.
To a home console. Home consoles have the luxury of just being able to throw the best of everything right at you. But it's a very different story with handhelds. Handhelds are constantly having to fight these impossible battles between how much power can they fit inside versus how much that's going to destroy the tiny battery juicing the thing. How to create a big enough screen to be immersive, but how to make the thing small enough that it's still portable. How do you create buttons and joysticks that are...
Yeah, like the only reason you're buying a Switch is because of Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, Mario. Like, that's the only reason you'd ever buy it, is for those games. I mean, like, Whoa, wait, Portal? Okay, no, that's good. There's Portal on it. So I have to play that. I have it. I don't play it. But you're only buying it for Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, Mario. I feel like... Oh, and Smash. So, like... If you don't want Mario or anything else, then it's kind of a waste. Because on a Steam Deck, right, you get PlayStation exclusives, Xbox exclusives. You get any game you want. You get COD, you get anything, just excluding Nintendo.
Long-lasting and accurate, but low profile enough that they're not persistently getting caught on things. The list goes on. And because of these endless dilemmas, you always have to make a big compromise when it comes to handheld. Whether that's playing on a Nintendo Switch 1 and wading through games
Oh,
with
and Pokemon. Yeah, that's a big one.
stuttery frame rates and muddy visuals, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Look at this.
Wading through games with stuttery frame rates and muddy visuals.
$1 billion company game, by the way. Yeah, that's really bad. And the new one that's coming out this year, like, it just looks like a horrible game. It's an eyesore playing this game. I have it, I've beaten it. It's fun if you're just looking at the Pokemon, but if you look at this eyesore, you see that? It's the same graphic of that cluster of rocks 50 times right next to each other. And same thing with this wall. They take this wall and they paste it.
Visuals, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You know what you did.
Look at that. Look at that mountain.
Playing on a Steam Deck, but then
Exactly.
that's twice the thickness of the Switch 2, if not more, depending on how you measure the thing. All those Windows handhelds, which absolutely nuke your battery life and can't seem to escape the fact that Windows was designed around mouse and keyboard. There are also these new Xbox handhelds now, which do seem like they're going to somewhat help the situation,
Just looks
but
like Cloud Play, right?
that doesn't change my point, which is that this, the Nintendo Switch 2, for me, makes the least amount of compromise for being handheld. Your games will run at a slightly lower resolution than docked, but while keeping all the same visual effects turned on. And it's only when you're holding the thing like this that you feel the gravity
Who's playing their Switch outside a basketball court? Like,
of what an achievement this is. Like, I am playing Cyberpunk 2077, the full game, plus DLC, with this practically endless floor-to-sky city filled with glowing neon signs, lit-up billboards, people, cars, on a handheld that's about the thickness of my phone with a case on it. That's not absolutely blasting me with cooling fans, meaning I can hear the game really clearly and I don't need to evacuate the room every time I try and load something on it. I'm playing in a way that I don't have to once enter a graphics menu to fiddle around and try and find just the right setting so it looks as nice as it can while being able to handle the frame rate smoothly. And while I would say the end result doesn't look quite as good as it would on the Steam Deck OLED.
Yeah. Yeah, and the screen's not even LED. You're... Here. I'll grab mine. It's dead, but... Like... Why wouldn't I just play on this instead? You know? Why wouldn't I just play on my Switch instead? It's like... Why would I spend $500 on a console I can't get when I have this right here? And I'd get 2 different games. 2 more games to play. Like... I don't understand it. And stick drift is still a problem. So in like 2 months after you get it, you're gonna start getting stick drift. Yeah, if you want to play a game like Cyberpunk 2077, you're gonna be paying just as much for this, and stuff doesn't go on sale. Because I look at the sale on PlayStation like a couple weeks ago. This game right here wasn't $60, $80. It was $20. But they don't have sales like that on Switch. So you're gonna be... It's always going to be $80 for the new Mario Kart. It's always going to be $90 for the new Mario Kart. Yeah, PS prices are just incredible. What? I got Battlefront for like $10. I know. No. Hold on. I know for a fact that like Mario Kart... Yeah, Mario Kart World is $80. $80. I don't get it. And you have to pay extra for a game you already own. So you want to put Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom into your Switch, and you want to play it with the Switch 2 graphics, you're going to spend $15 more on that. So that's just absurd.
But it's way closer than I would expect, thanks to the sheer level of optimization that developers can have when they're designing a game just for one exact piece of hardware. I'm playing a game where the entire world is loaded onto one game cartridge with no additional downloads required, on a console that can not just play its own entire library of games, but also the whole library of its last-gen counterpart, just with better load times and fixed performance for basically any game that was struggling, which...
But who is playing Hogwarts Legacy? I know.
Wait, $10 for the walkthrough game? So for the Welcome to Switch 2 game? For the Welcome to Switch 2 game, it's $10. Exactly, this dude gets it. This dude already gets it. Doesn't let me highlight, there it is. This dude in the blue gets it. The only point of getting one is for the Nintendo exclusive games. Yeah. Exactly. The best worst console ever.
It's not good.
By the end of the Switch 1 life cycle was quite a lot of them. Not even to mention, I am pleasantly shocked with how good the speakers sound. It's such a powerful stereo effect that in some moments I've genuinely felt like I had speakers sitting here and here. And while yeah, the face buttons and the joysticks are pretty meh, the triggers, and especially these release triggers to take the controllers out, borderline addictive. I actually think I may have a problem. I just keep randomly pulling these out while playing the game. So when I think about it in that context, I can see exactly where the Switch 2 fits into my life. This is for 2 things. Nintendo exclusives, for which, while the must-plays for me are kind of thin on the ground right now, I am sure I'm going to cave when it comes to the new Pokemon games at the end of the year, and...
Look at how bad this game looks. No, look at this. Look at these windows. That is a PNG. Brand new Pokemon game. Oh, wow.
Whenever they eventually decide to release the next...
You know what's sad? Is that I'm probably going to buy that game. I'm like shitting on it, but like, I'm going to play it.
Next version of Super Smash Bros. And it's for playing the home console games.
Wait, what?
Eventually decide to release the next version of Super Smash.
What is this?
The new Pokemon games at the end of the year, and whenever they eventually decide to release...
Mr. Edgley? Coach Betts?
It's the next version of Super Smash Bros. And it's for playing the home console games that I never got round to playing on the home consoles. Because unlike locking myself in the basement and clearing my entire evening to power through them, this lets me play 20 minutes.
Really? You're that addicted that you're playing it.
While I'm walking on the elliptical. It lets me get a cheeky hour in while sitting next to Drisha, who's catching up with Cobra Kai. This lets me play while soaking up that little spot of sun that we get once a month in the UK. That said,
I
the
know.
screen on this thing
Like,
is
just work
very
out.
nice for an
Look at that. You're looking at what's behind you on your screen outside. That's the exact same thing with the regular Switch too. That's the
LCD.
exact
It's
same
also
thing.
a little more reflective than I'd like when you're trying to play
So he's glazing it, right? But he's pointing out all the bad stuff and still saying the bad stuff is good.
outdoors. But the point of it being able to really smoothly glide into your existing lifestyle stands. And
Is he not just pointing out what the Switch does? Right? It's a Switch, but stronger. It's the exact same thing. It might be bigger, it might be thinner, but it is the exact same thing as the normal Switch. I don't understand it.
from all the developer interviews that I've seen, it doesn't look like bringing these home console games to Switch 2 is nearly as much of a burden as you might think it is. Which means that assuming the console sells in good numbers, then I think unlike the Switch 1 that just didn't have the raw grunt for it, Switch 2 could very easily become the default destination for developers to bring
Whoa, 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 whoa. What is this lineup? No Man's Sky, Yakuza, Hitman World of Assassination.
their high functioning
You're gonna get one game on that, and then you're gonna have to buy a whole terabyte SD card that's gonna run you $200, and then you're gonna be able to play 2 games.
graphically intensive home console games to handheld.
Okay.
And that would make me so happy.
See you,
And it's
Preston.
looking like it is on track for that. You know, while it was a little alarming just how easy it was to get one of these, no insane queues, no scalpers trying to rinse you on eBay for twice the retail price, it turns out that that's just because Nintendo has
Here,
actually
TJ
produced
Maxx.
enough units to not be lacking. They just tweeted out recently that Switch 2 is the fastest selling piece of Nintendo hardware in history, which you can't really have a clearer signal than that for any developers who are sitting on the fence to just get stuck in. The only other very important detail remaining is battery. And this is both impressive and alarming, depending on what your context is. So I'm getting about 3 hours of battery while playing Cyberpunk.
3 hours of battery. 3 hours of battery is crazy.
That's not a massive amount when you're comparing to the OLED Switch 1, which had like a base minimum of 4.5 hours. But at the same time, it's an absolute ton if you compare it to the ROG Ally, which might only last an hour and a half playing the same game. It is probably the lowest battery life to exist for any big brand mainstream handheld console. And so while it does feel like a miracle that you can play these games on something so thin, you also never want to be too far from a power source. So ultimately, my recommendation is simple. Don't buy the console in the hopes that they're going to announce the game that you want. Buy it when they've announced the game that you want, with the reassurance that as a piece of hardware to play that game on, Switch 2 is a very well-oiled machine.
Oh. I mean, I just want to know who's paying him